Hi, once again, everybody, and greeting true believers. I'm Ed Berliner. Welcome into the Talk Sports Network and Outside the Lines with our sports attorney, our agent, and the man who knows all, sees all, tells all. But then again, that's how I introduce a lot of our guests on these shows, because that's the kind of people that I deal with every single day. As we turn to what goes on underneath the surface, if you will, in sports. Pleasure once again to welcome Joe Casale into the show. How you been, Big Joe?
Ed, how are you? It's
Another
the
day.
holiday season. Coaches are becoming multimillionaires. People are spending all of their time on social media tracking private planes. It's that sign of season.
It is. It really is. As I've made this mention to other people in other shows, I've talked about my first experience with a lot of this was in NASCAR, when they call it the silly season, which was those last couple of races. Everybody knew that they were changing teams. Everybody was moving. People were being let go. People had to find new jobs for the next year. It was that silly season with drivers moving around and nobody knew where it was. And it was everybody was on top of it. And now we've got it in college football. We truly have. See, even Tasso knows that it's a silly season, and he's got to get him. Look, I love that kid, because that little fur kid of yours, because he makes all the purpose right here, and he gets right excited about it. God love him for it. But it's Joe. We're in a college football silly season now, and the first thing that everybody wants to talk about is, well, we've got to pay $8 million, $9 million, $10 million. And then people, the keyboard warriors are out there going, wait a minute, nobody's worth that kind of money. Well, yes, stop. They're worth whatever they can get, Joe. That's what this business is all about, right?
It's not about worth. I mean, if it was worth, then first responders would be the highest paid people in American
Thank
employment.
you.
I mean, it's a supply and demand deal. The coaching salaries are going through the roof because revenues are going through the roof. This is big business. This is not, we all want to act as if this is just our tidy little teams doing their thing. I mean, this isn't the Ivy League. This is big business. These are universities that are generating in excess of $150 million a year in revenues in their athletic programs. And with that money, they're not paying the employees, which are the players. So the money's going to go somewhere. And it's exploding. And that's just the way it is.
Well,
Now,
the first thing we have to
I
make
mean,
clear with
listen,
everybody here is,
I've lost my virginity of college sports a long time ago. I mean, it's big business. So you really, as I said on a show the other day, everybody wants to be Michael Phelps, but everybody doesn't want to go in the pool and race the laps. We want to put our toe in. Well, you're not going to put your toe in. And what we saw this week were two universities, Miami and USC, very analogous in the sense that they're both private institutions. They are both in major sports cities with, multiple professional sports teams that play in, well, the LA Coliseum used to house a professional sports team. Miami does. And both tried to live on their brand for the last 15 years. Oh, we're just, we're Miami, we're USC.
we're the Trojans, we're the Hurricanes, we're big time. No, you're not
What's
big
funny
time.
about this weekend? I was going through some stuff, getting the house set up for Christmas, and I'm a notorious pack rat. So I have my day planners that go back, gosh, I'm ashamed to say over 30 years.
You and me both.
But
I
I
got those
found
too.
one, and on December 9th, 2005, I had a meeting with then late athletic director Paul D at the University of Miami. And the discussion was, I was telling Paul that I had spent a year that year traveling for business in various college venues doing college games for Sports USA Radio. And I had said to Paul, I said, Paul, there is an arms race going on right now in college athletics, that these facilities that are getting built and these universities are really amping up. And if Miami doesn't catch up, they're going to be left behind. And he looked at me and he said, with all due respect, I disagree. We're Miami. We don't have to do that. And I said, Paul, if that's your attitude, in 3 years, you're going to be irrelevant because you are going to get lapped by these other schools. And what we saw this week was the University of Miami deciding to go Michael Phelps. We are going in the deep end of the pool. We are going to swim the laps, not just with the hiring of Mario Cristobal, with having the largest assistant coach payroll in the ACC,
Right.
hiring one of the 5 best athletic directors in the country in Dan Radakovich. they have decided we're in. And that that has spurred all kinds of emotion, from Miami people being exceptionally excited to some Miami people being upset because they're no longer power brokers at the table, to some national media saying the U is back, this will be fun again, to some national media who've harbored grudges against Miami for 30 years saying, oh, it's terrible, they're raiding healthcare funds to do this, which they're not. But all of these new narratives coming up. But the bottom line is, if Kirk Herbstreit did not call out the University of Miami for shortchanging their athletic department, we wouldn't be here today. That
Good point.
created a domino effect that brought people to the table who have been wanting to invest in the University of Miami athletic programs for years to say, if you want us, it's now or never. And in any negotiation, as I always say, it's all about leverage. And these folks had their leverage. To Dr. Frank's credit, he put together a small group of people to go through the athletic department and see if what was said was needed was needed. When they came back with a report that said it was, all of these changes began to take place. And that brought us to where we are today. Now, people can say, I had a very good friend of mine say to me, I think it's shameful that a private university that charges $60,000 a year plus for tuition would do this. And I said, they're going to charge the same amount of money for tuition, whether they pay the head football coach in Cafecitos or $8 million a year. It's what you're doing with your private money. Does the Moss family step up if Mario Cristobal is not the coach? No. Does Marcus Lemonis step up if Mario Cristobal is not the coach? No.
And what is it?
I
Wait a
mean,
minute. For those who aren't aware, let's get to that point. You talk about the Moss family and the Lamonis family as well. What did they do that is pushed aside, that is not reported in a lot of the national
well,
media?
they are Columbus High School graduates like Mario is. There is a kinship there. And these are billionaire donors. I mean, Marcus this morning went to Columbus High School and gave an $18,000 Christmas bonus to every employee of Columbus High School. These are people with unbelievable ties and loyalties to the community. I mean, these are people who owe a lot of where they are today to the mentors and the people that came before them, and they're giving back. But they're giving back into things they're passionate about. They're passionate about their high school. They're passionate about Miami football. Those are their passions.
What about those
And
people saying that
so
when you get the
they want to
billionaires in
invest in
line
their
here,
passions.
what about the people who would say that when you start getting the billionaires here who are then shoveling money to high school assistant coaches at their alma mater, sure, it looks good on the surface, but what you're doing basically is you're greasing the skids then for an avenue for the Columbus kids to get to the University of Miami to make sure that pipeline is there and the recruiting is all set, and that seems to be a little greasy. Those people who would say
Well, they're not invested. They're not giving the coaches money. They're giving every person there, whether you're a janitor or you're a coach or you're a teacher or you're a guidance counselor. And the fact is, Columbus doesn't have a lot of players every year that end up at the University of Miami. It's
okay,
not
good.
the kind of program as American Heritage and these other, like St. Thomas Aquinas and the other things. Sometimes people do things because they're actually good people. There
For the
isn't
right
this
reasons? Holy
ulterior
shit, Joe,
motive
what are you
that they
talking
have
about?
this grand plan. Yeah, I mean, so it's listen, Ed, this is the world we're in. I said this the other day. You know, if we're going to question every single thing that people do, then people aren't going to do them. I mean, the Moss family has hundreds of various charities that they give their money to. I mean, it's actually a good thing that they're investing in the university. And it's actually a good thing that there's an excitement level to this, because here's what's happening in college in general, not just in athletics. Students today want a total college experience. I'll give you an example. There are private schools like American Heritage, Carrollton School of the Sacred Heart, which is an all girls school, Gulliver. Um, their students have the pick of schools they want to go to: Duke, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. You know what a lot of these students are looking for? They're looking for the total college experience. I have a very good friend of mine whose daughter got accepted to Yale, Harvard, Ole Miss. She went to Ole Miss because she went there in a football weekend and experienced the Grove and all of that. And she said, I want that kind of college experience. I want to have fun on the weekends. I study every day. I can do that at Yale and Harvard. I can do that at Ole Miss, but I can't have a weekends like that. I want to really enjoy that. And what you're finding is if you look at the admissions offices at LSU, Auburn, Alabama, Ole Miss, the University of Michigan, Ohio State, more and more students, particularly South Florida students, they want that college
Well,
experience.
but
So when
Joe,
you're
but what you're saying here is the
competing,
college experience, though, has to include the athletic side of things, which is what people sometimes are forgetting. That's what they want.
correct.
The athletic experience of the University of Miami, Southern Cal, LSU, Notre Dame, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, whatever it is, includes the athletic experience. And we're all going to, let's stop the nonsense here. That means college football. That means that big time experience that you want to get with the fans and with the color and with the players and with being able to cheer from the stands. The athletic department at these schools is part of the entertainment experience and it is part of the draw experience. Because
Absolutely.
if you haven't got that, and that's what people are missing here, and that's what Miami has missed for a lot of years, is you've got to spend the money and you've got to invest the money in that because that will draw students, that will help your $60,000 a year tuition, whatever it is. You got to
Absolutely.
have it. And
Absolutely.
Miami
It
screwed
all
that up
goes
going
hand in
way back to
hand.
Paul D. And also, let's not forget Donna Shalala, who was part of the problem here, who didn't give a shit about the athletic experience. She was much in the Tad Foote manner of doing things. We're going to build the Harvard of the South, the Yale of the South. Guess what? You can't do that. It doesn't equate. So, what Miami has done and all these other schools are doing, Joe, to your point, spend the money. We got it, and we've got to be able to do it because that puts us on an echelon, not just with athletics, but with academics as well.
Well, sure. I mean, look, if you're going to ask families, whether they're loans or their own funds to spend this kind of money to go to school, it's more than just the building. And it's not just athletics in the sense that the student activity centers, these schools are spending tens of millions of dollars to build new student activity centers that are like country clubs. I mean, this is the arms race that's going on in college
Right.
campuses because it is competitive to get good students. And by good students, it's not just grades, it's by students who can afford, whether it's via loans or by family funds, to go to these schools. So there is a tremendous competition. Athletics is a large component of that. And so, Miami stepped up and decided to play with the big boys
But
now.
how is Miami?
You
And
know,
here's the question, Joe, that I think we need to get to fans. How is Miami, USC, LSU, Georgia, all those schools I mentioned, how do they then equate that money? We're going to go ahead and spend another 10, 20, $30 million for places to play, for student unions, for practice facilities. How do they then equate that it is going to actually help? That it does. Is it a 5 year plan, a 10 year plan, where we've got to make sure the money's coming back to us, or on the other side, don't they care? Because as long as the athletic department is out there making money, and college football is cashing money from the ACC, the SEC, the Pac-12, whatever the Pac, whatever it is, doesn't make a difference. That's where we care about. We don't care how many students it brings in here, as long as we're cashing in the checks from the networks. That's it.
well, it's not a dollar for dollar thing. It is,
That's it.
we just built a new student activity center. I mean, when you see some of these schools and you go on a visit, I'm talking non-athletes now, even just general students, and you go on a visit and the admissions committee members are taking you around. There's our new student activity center, $65 million. There's our new study center. There's this,
Which
there's
the
that.
football
It's
program
all
helped to pay
part
for.
of, and these things stay with the universities forever. It's not like they're going to tear the building down. Oh shit, our football team went 3-8. Tear down the building.
But
I
that's
mean,
just
it
it.
doesn't
That
work
money
that
is
way.
there because of football. Stop the nonsense. It's at
Well,
Duke, maybe it's because of
it's
basketball,
there
but
it's
those
there
buildings are
either
sitting there
because
because that football program made money from the networks.
yeah, I mean it's either that or private donations or combinations, but it's all of it. It's all, goes back into the schools. I mean, that's how it works. I mean, the weird quirk of where we are at college is we live under this romanticized notion that these are just the way it was when we were in school 35, 40 years ago. And it isn't anymore. These are big businesses, and they're big businesses with big budgets and big pressures to produce. And that's where it's at. And if you walk around these campuses, if you walk around Clemson University, if you look, Florida State's got a lot of buildings because of Bobby Bowden. And
Yep.
if you haven't been to the University of Miami lately, you probably don't realize they've got one hell of an indoor practice facility. They've got a tremendous student activity center. But here's the wild thing: they didn't have lights at the Green Tree practice facility until 2013. It's kind of crazy when you
You
think
think
about it,
about
because here we are in daylight savings. What time are you going to have practice? Because if you have practice at 4:30 in the afternoon, it's starting to get dark. So, I mean, it's all of these things. You're investing back into the university. And again, my whole thing with this, and I understand people pushing back and saying, this is not the way it should be in college. But here it is. You want to be Vanderbilt and get your ass kicked every year in the SEC, but cash those big checks? Or do you want to be Miami and USC? It's a little harder for Miami and USC to be Vanderbilt because they've got 13 national championships between the two of them. It's hard to pull back once you've gotten in. So what's going to happen now is these schools have stepped up to play with the big boys. What I chuckle about is that there are people that come out of the woodwork that have harbored grudges against Miami for years, haven't had to exercise them because Miami hasn't mattered, who are now really pissed off this week, which leads me to believe that Miami is on the right track because it's pissed off people again. Miami was always Miami when they did things that piss people off. Oh my God, these kids dance after a first down. What's going to happen to sportsmanship and all of this nonsense that you and I lived through the glory years at Miami to now where Miami didn't matter at all. I mean, nobody cared about Miami for almost 2 decades. Now they care again. That's a good thing. And look, I am admittedly biased against Mario Cristobal. I represented his brother. I've known the family for 35 years. I think Mario Cristobal is one of the most top of the salt individuals you are ever going to meet in your life as a human being, forget as a football coach. And him coming back here isn't a nostalgia story, because if Mario didn't go to work for Nick Saban, Mario would have never come back to work at the University of Miami. Because what Mario learned under Nick Saban is really what it takes to have a successful football program that he implemented at Oregon. When he went to Oregon, Oregon was struggling. In the last 3 years, they're 35-13. For people who only live in the most recent game, I would say a guy that's won 3 conference championships, a Rose Bowl, and had his team in the top 10, the 3 things Miami hasn't had in 20 years, you'd kill for that. And that was the
Yep.
floor of what Mario did at Oregon, let alone the ceiling. When he coming back here, Mario didn't come back here for a pay raise. Mario's going to get a pay raise at Oregon. Mario came back here because they showed him the vision. They showed him that they're going to invest in this football program again in the way to make them competitive. And that is a good thing. I mean, I will always say athletics always buttresses a university, even at the Ivy League level. Um, it makes it a more enjoyable experience, and it buttresses university when done the right way.
Okay.
And I think the people in place are committed to doing it the right way.
But let's get into a couple of things here quickly because you touched on these. And for a global audience that we speak to, and also the Miami audience, there's a couple of things here that we need to address. You have said, and many people have said as well, that there is an ingrained hatred of the University of Miami athletics when it comes to a national press view. Got it. Why should anybody care, Joe? As we speak now to people who are watching us in Florida, California, New York, Japan, the United Kingdom, whatever. Why should anybody give a damn that people hate the University of Miami on a national scale? Who cares?
They shouldn't, because it doesn't matter. I mean, that's Miami was Miami when they didn't care what everybody thought. Miami stopped becoming Miami when they tried to be everybody's friend. This is not a friend business. I mean, Jim Harbaugh doesn't wake up every morning saying, "What can I do to be liked?" Jim Harbaugh wakes up every morning saying, "What can I do to make Michigan a better football team, and what can I do to help them beat Ohio State?"
Right.
So I mean, this isn't about friends. It's the old saying, "You want a friend, buy a dog." This is, do you want to compete at the highest levels? It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to back it up with the kind of financial backing. And I know people hate talking about money, but you know what? Without it, you're not going to do it. There isn't any little engine that could. Even the University of Cincinnati poured millions into their program to make it good again. Okay? To get them to this level. It's a big business. And Miami decided it's time to get in that big business. So for
So if we're
people
looking at
like
this on a
us,
national scale, we need to point out to everybody that what Miami did is endemic of what goes on at college athletics all across the country. If you're watching us in
yeah,
Southern California and you're a USC fan, you're an LSU fan, you're a Gator fan, a Seminole fan, it makes no difference. This is how the game is played. You do not move up, you do not become big, you do not get the money unless you spend the money.
no
And
question.
places like Notre Dame spend it all the time. Cincinnati finally decided, look, if we're going to be relevant, we have to spend the money, and they did. So it's simply the matter of doing that. You want to play with the big boys, you got to get here. Joe, this also leads to the point that sooner or later, there's going to be a delineating line. You're going to have 20, 30, maybe 40. 40 has always been my number. You're going to have 40 college football programs in this country that are going to be big time, that are going to be the ones that run the scene. And eventually it's going to be a National Football League type of existence, if you will. Here's the big guys, here's the rest. Sorry, you can't have 80 big guys across the country. It's not going to happen. You're going to
Right.
have the haves and the have-nots. Live with it. And eventually you're going to be a second and third tier division, and there's going to be the big guns like Miami, LSU, USC, Oklahoma, and all the rest. Live with it.
Well, that's where college football's going. And guess what? If
Quickly.
Miami didn't make these moves, Miami would be outside the 40.
That's the point.
So, that's the whole deal. I mean, these are moves, these people didn't become successful in private business, not being able to think ahead. And the people who are making all of these moves are people that have that kind of background. So, listen, it's big business. And just because it says college in front of it doesn't mean it's not big business. And just as college in general is big business, to attract, as we talked about earlier in the show, to attract non academic students, college is big business.
Sure.
Now, you add it where you're shrinking the pot. I mean, Ed, we're talking about adding 20 to 25 student athletes a year to your football program. That's it. And you got to compete with everybody in the country to get those kids.
Well, but is that fair to
Where
say when you're also
Miami
talking
was
about football,
always,
basketball, baseball, and all the rest? You are adding others, but what you're adding
but
are
we're
the
talking
the
football, what
huge
generates the
revenue
money.
generating athletes are going to come from football and basketball. That's it.
Yeah,
Stop, people.
and
We'd love to be
and
able
the
to say
one
that it's
thing
going to
that
come
is
from the rest of the programs, but it's not.
and the one thing that's always one thing that was always attractive to Miami is that if you drew a 75-mile radius to the campus, you are talking about 40 to 100 of the best high school football players in the country within 75 miles of your campus.
Right.
You get 10 to 12 of those kids a year, you're a top 10 program forever.
Right.
And Miami got away from that for a zillion reasons, but they got away from that. Now they have a guy who's committed to that. It's a big deal. Mario held a press conference and an hour and a half later was recruiting in his suit.
Well, but let's be
You know,
fair. People are talking about that like, hey, look, Mario's out there recruiting and Manny Diaz wasn't out there. Cut the bullshit. I mean, if you're the new
Well,
guy in
Manny
town,
Diaz was
you're
not
out there
out there
recruiting,
like this.
period. Every coach does
Yeah,
that, Joe.
no, but Manny Diaz was not out there like this. Earl Little Jr.
Well,
is
but at the
a
beginning,
legacy
all I'm saying
kid.
is at the beginning, Joe, when you're first there,
Yeah,
you're going to hit
but
the ground running because you want to make a good impression. And Mario's doing exactly what he needs to do. It is likely that he will continue to do it and he will be better at it, but it's not as if it was all of a sudden a magic twang, here's the magic wand that he's out there
no.
doing it when nobody else did it.
But Mario is
That's my
also a
point.
guy that recruited. Mario is also a guy that recruited 13 All-Americans and 9 first-round draft choices at Alabama. 6 of
Right.
those kids from South Florida, and the school in his backyard barely touched those kids.
Right.
Barely visited.
It's not what he's doing on the first day. It's what he's going to be doing on day 20 and day 30 and day
Right.
100. That's the big deal.
I mean, it's a different level of skill, experience, and commitment. And look, Mario's where he is today because of his failings. He learned from his failings. I mean, coaching is a failing business, and you learn from your failures. Bill Belichick crashed and burned in his first head coaching job. I mean,
True.
but you learn from it. And I think, and this isn't a bash Manny Diaz thing. Manny Diaz is a very nice guy. Manny Diaz never should have been the head coach of the University of Miami. It was too big a job for him. That doesn't mean when you're offered it, you don't take it.
That's not his
I don't know
fault.
many people. Yeah, it's not his fault.
That's the fault
And
of
he's
Donna
gonna
Shalala.
learn. Right. He's gonna learn from this experience. He's gonna learn that these are the things I did right. These are the things I did wrong. And that's what happens in coaching. The good thing for Manny is he's got $20 million in the bank from this experience. So he can pick and choose where he can learn next. And that's going to help. Hell, he may end up as an analyst with Nick Saban in Alabama.
Well, but
That
that's
seems
part
to
of the
be the
thing I
place
brought
for
about here, Joe.
rehabbing coaches.
When it comes to Manny Diaz or any other coach that's gone, that's been fired, stop the nonsense, people. It's not as if you can just sit here and make fun of he and his family. You can say, he did a crappy job. He destroyed the University of Miami. He looked to come in here and he just destroyed us. It's not like he woke up every single day or any other coach that's been fired wakes up and says, what can I do today to screw this program? And how can I really stick it in the ground? That's not what they do. In the case of a Manny Diaz, he was not at the point where he should have been a head coach. He had not paid those dues yet, but that's not his fault. He was hired by somebody who gave him the job. He tried the best he could.
That's right.
So say thank you, shake his hand. He's got $20 million walking away by the time it's done. And the guy didn't piss on everybody on his way out the door. So give him the chops for being a classy act. But don't hold him.
Look,
Don't
this
knock
is
him
a
because he
business.
screwed the University of Miami. Stop with you people in that nonsense. I'm tired of this.
Look, Hyman
That
Roth
gets
said
me
it best
angry.
in The Godfather. This is the business we have chosen.
And he
He
knew it.
Manny was head coach at Temple for 3 weeks, left to take the Miami job. I mean, this is the way the business is.
Right.
And it's just the nature of the beast. But I think, look, Miami hit a home run in hiring Dan Radakovich as athletic director, Mario Cristobal as head football coach.
That's the key.
A huge home run.
And they did it because they opened the bank.
Entire athletic department. Okay. I mean, I must have heard from 50 different people that used to work at UM in the last 3 days of how excited they were. It's like almost like they're putting the band back together again. People who are successful in other things in life. I mean, last week I'm in New Orleans to do the Miami, the Saints Dallas football game. And Rich Dalrymple, who was a former SID at Miami, who's now Jerry Jones's right-hand guy in Dallas. Rich is excited. I mean, these are people that worked in Miami 30 years ago. They still have an affinity for the place. And, there are so many people that are excited about this. And we live in a society today that if anybody's excited about somebody, about something or someone, there's always someone nearby to want to throw, cold water on it. But you know what? This is not a cold water situation. This is actually a happy time. And it's going to be very exciting to see what happens going forward because they finally have the right people in place to do the things they want to do.
Because they decided they had to
great.
spend the money. They went away from what was the Paul D model that you spoke of earlier when he said, we don't have to compete because you do. This is 2021, 2022. If you're not out there competing on the college football level, if you're not out there spending that money, and giving coaches $8, $9, $10 million and spending more money on assistant coaches and building the facilities, you can't compete. You're not going to be one of those 40 programs that in 10 years from now is going to be college football / National Football League. It's going to
Absolutely.
happen, people. And believe me, it's going to be in the state of Florida. It's going to be Florida, Florida State, and Miami. Georgia, it's going to be Georgia, Georgia Tech. California, it's going to be USC and UCLA, maybe Long Beach State. Who knows what will happen there, and a couple of others that'll be there. Stanford, it's going to be the big programs. You're going to have a second tier. If you don't want to be that second tier program, you got to cough up the cash. Miami had not done it, and that was always the big key with Cristobal, was not, is he going to come home? Does he want to come home? It was always, how much money are you going to spend and impress the guy and tell him, we're going to be one of those that will survive in the future. And you're here as part.
And
Yes,
had
how'd I do,
Mario,
Joe?
yeah, that's true. But had Mario not gone to work for Nick Saban, there's no way
Right.
Miami's getting Mario, because Mario is able to say, this is what it takes to get where you say you want to go.
He learned from the
If
best.
you don't want to go there, I'm not leaving Oregon / Nikeville for home, no matter how great home is. And so it ended up, Ed, there's an old saying in football, it's not who you play, but when you play them. And in
Sure.
Miami, the timing of this could not have been better. It was the timing of a guy who bleeds orange and green, but also a school that's ready to step up and do the right thing
Well, a school
financially.
that knew
So
it
it just
had to
turned out
step
to
up,
work
Joe.
out.
A school that knew it had to step
Well,
up, just like USC has done, just like LSU has done in helping to clean out the Orgeron years. Although that's another story that we could get into as to who they hired and why. But if you're not willing to make the step up, coaches don't want to come to work for you anymore. They've got other choices.
no, there's no doubt about it. Even this guy knows that he had to do it. Right?
Tasso
Even
makes his
this guy,
appearance,
who's
ladies and
been
gentlemen.
biting my hand for the last 15 minutes, knows it was time for them to step up.
See? And on that note, if Tasso gives it the approval, that's all we need to know. We will
That's it.
continue this conversation on a weekly basis, because that's why I have Josie here, and he and I have been doing this show outside the lines for years, is because more comes out of the 30 minutes that we spend together than in a lot of those shows that spend days and hours in doing it. And all the clown shows that are out there on social media, don't listen to them, listen to us. We've been here. You want to get a hold of Joe, go to Facebook at Chef Casale, and you can check him out there and read his stuff. It is brilliant stuff. It should be daily part of your reading as well. Tasso, good seeing you again, partner. We still got to get Magnus and Bailey together with him. But that's going to happen hopefully one of these days. Joe, always a pleasure, man. Take care. Cook well. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ed. Talk to you soon.
For Joe,
Be
for
a good boy.
Tasso, for everybody here, thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner. Until we meet again, rock on, true believers. See ya.